Hello, everyone. Glad you can join us tonight. We got a couple of shows we're going to be discussing tonight. We're going to, of course, be looking at the Murdoch trial, when the defense and what they brought forth today. Also, on a cold case that we're going to be working in Texas on Amber Crum. Got some information about that, and we're working towards going out there. But always, before we get into a little bit about if you're new to this channel and you it's your first time here, we have a presentation at the beginning, and then we answer questions in the later part of the show. So hang around. I'll answer all your questions as they come up, and look forward to that. But as in chat, when you're here, just respect the families, respect the mods, and respect each other, and we'll get started now. All right. As always, a little brief introduction for anyone that's new to the show. This is Mrs. Steve, and I'm Steve. I'm a retired law enforcement with 20 years of service. During those 20 years, I started off my career in the jail, went on the road, and then went into investigations. Had all different types of training from SWAT team to becoming a state certified crime scene technician, which helped my investigative career. And after I retired, I found the true crime world and decided to become as good a law enforcement ambassador as I could. And I never imagined our channel would grow at the rate it's growing, and that we would be moving into working cold cases, such as the Amber Crum case, which we'll be talking about at the towards the end of the slide presentation. But with that being said, let's get started into it. All right. For people that are so vested in this trial, we saw the prosecution for the last 4 weeks or so bring forth their side. Now we're seeing the defense, and the defense brought in an expert today. But before they brought in an expert, of course, their first witness today was Buster, which is Alex Murdaugh's other son. Paul, of course, was a victim of a homicide along with Maggie. And it was extremely interesting to see Buster on the stand and talking about his family. You're talking about an individual that's lost everything. He's lost a brother, lost a mother, and his father is sitting on trial and facing the rest of his life in prison if he's convicted of this or of the financial crimes that will be coming up in future trials. And so it's just absolutely a tragedy on so many different levels. But anyway, as Buster took the stand today and was talking about his family, there were some things that came up that was of interest. You know, he's, like I said, he's extremely conflicted. And he believes still in his father from the way that you could see that as the questions were asked by the defense and of which way he was feeling and that he believes and supports his father. And it didn't appear that he wanted to say anything that would be critical of his father as far as anything that would lead to his conviction. And that's something that you would expect. You're talking about a child that believed in his family and is very defensive of that family. And he knew of some of the issues about the addictions and things, but some of the gun information and how he relayed that information about how Paul was so kind of lackadaisical about keeping up with the firearms on the property, which absolutely surprised me that anyone would be that irresponsible that you just misplace guns or leave them out and leave them in different areas. Extremely interesting. And there was some question that he didn't know about certain guns being replaced, such as the missing 300 Blackout that was missing, and that him and his brother did have some controversies over when Paul would use his 300 blackout after his first one come up missing. And he did mention something about the mixture, because one of the points that the prosecution brought forth in the prior testimony was about how they would load their firearms, the shotguns in particular, that they would mix loads. And when Buster was talking about that today, he made absolutely total sense of what when he's hunting turkeys, of how he would load a weapon with different size shot. Meaning that when he was out turkey hunting, he had a lighter load for the first round, and then a heavier load as far as a 3-inch and a 3.5-inch shell for if he didn't knock that bird down, then he would do a follow-up shot, anticipating that the bird may be further away. And absolutely makes sense. Heard it 100 times by different hunters in my life. But he did say that at no point had he or anyone that he ever known of to load a firearm in the sequence of what the 2 rounds that struck his brother, the first one being buckshot, and then of course a turkey load. And he said that knowing his family, he had ever known to do that. So that was extremely interesting. And but he explained some of the stuff about the family dynamics, and that the night of that when he arrived, of some of the steps that he took about helping his father. His father was extremely distressed, and helping him pack, and so they could go over to another property with some of the family and stay the night. Came back to the house the next day and showered. Everything, like I said, it's what you would expect of a supporting family member that would testify, that did not want to do anything that seemed critical or possibly could be used by the prosecution to find someone guilty of a crime that they're supporting. But talked a lot about his college stuff and about where he moved and lived throughout his life, and the dynamics of why they were on that property and they still had other properties. So it's just, one thing to another that is, like I said, not very anything that would drive the jury one way or another. But the second part of the day was when it was focused on the expert, the forensic engineer, Mike Sutton. And this is something that I found extremely interesting, and I had been waiting on their firearms expert, and never expected that it would be a forensic engineer. That was quite the surprise. And finding that this is that he had worked in the field of mostly reconstruction of car accidents and some crime scenes and lawsuits of where people had suffered gunshot wounds and injuries, and how he would, of course, go in there and reconstruct, and that he has a limited court experience. He's been in different areas and as an expert, but it's very limited. And which is everyone has to start somewhere. And of course, he started on this case and everything. And as far as the firearms part aspects of it, he was very informative in certain areas. He is an individual that has book learning that is absolutely impressive. His field experience of crime scene investigations and his field experience of the operations and firearms, not so much. He's not so much on the CSI law enforcement part of it as he is with some of the technologies that he was working with. And like I said, extremely well educated and very easy to understand. And I was impressed with that. I was extremely impressed with the first probably 80% of his testimony. But we'll get to what part didn't impress me at a certain point. But like I said, it was interesting to hear his credentials and see where he was going with it, and saying certain things and how he performed and came to these conclusions. And of course, we've heard from the prosecution's expert, which describes certain aspects of the crime, about the angles of the shot on Paul, and then also about some of the shot placements and how dynamic and fluid the crime scene was for Maggie, and where those shots went and where the guns were oriented. And of course, when Mr. Sutton was talking about it, and he introduced his computer program, which is, I'm old school. You can watch some of the stuff that as I recreated the crime scene um, on a range and submitted it, and of course Chris and I working together with the mob crew and him creating some of those videos, that I look at it from a different aspects of it, of following the not only which way the gun is oriented and what certain angles are, but where does the port eject those shell casings. And all experts are going to have some varying differences in how they evaluate and look at a crime scene. It's no different in this case. Of course, you've got this expert, you have the prosecution's expert, and then you have my opinion of what I believe. And I still stick with it, for even with what he brought in today, and especially with the presentation. He has a slideshow presentation of the laser show and the angles that is quite impressive. That even from the shot that went into the bird cage, that there was two different readings that the SLED agent Worley had photograph of coming where that bullet came from and where it crossed over the scene where Maggie was discovered. All of it absolutely brilliant. He has it at an angle that I agree with, that the gun has to be somewhere on that laser line. It has to be oriented, and I have no argument with this. Now I do have certain arguments, and I didn't have all the information of where these casings are. And I would argue that when some of these shots occurred, and if you watch our video, if you go over to the recreation I did for of the crime scene, and that Chris has on his channel, the Mob Crew, if y'all are interested in going and looking at that, I highly suggest you look at those videos and see from my viewpoint of what I evaluated and determined these angles from, and which way the gun was facing. And all of this is very close to my opinion, and so I can't disagree with it. But some of the ejections of the shell casings from this image here are closer than what I imagined, for the fact that I was working off a diagram that wasn't to scale. Now, where these casings were recovered and this close to the body, just means that there was some type of deflection, some type of struggle that went on when that port was facing towards the direction that the casings were kicked. And of course, the prosecution at one point today brought up a point that absolutely threw the SLED agents under the bus when they were talking about that, and asked Sutton, was he familiar with that the shell casings could have been moved and maybe kicked and moved, and they're not in their proper location, which I never imagined that the prosecution would say that about their supporting agency that processed the crime scene. That was absolutely amazing, and I'm gonna have to think about that for a long time, about exactly what that angle was for him to even suggest that. And if it is the truth, then of course SLED messed up even more than, or the law enforcement officers that secured the scene had a larger influence on some of the evidence than I even ever considered. But this angle here, that yes, as I spoke on Chris's show, I believe that there was some type of struggle in this location. The firearm went off, or the firearm was intentionally fired, pass-through injury or something that went over there and then struck the bird cage. Absolutely believe this totally. Then we have where we have not only this, but we have a shot that's into the doghouse that's at a higher angle, which the expert still, once again, was really big into the hip shot and places that this is where the convergence of all the angles meet. And I understand that concept. Don't have a real big problem with it. It still shows that there's a struggle possibly going on here. In our video would be position 3 and 4. But I have it further back that due to where the casings were found, and if you'll remember, there's a shell casing that's known as item number 2 that is down towards where the first gravel impact is. And so if you take along that level that struck the doghouse and move the guy that's to the left that's shooting the weapon at the doghouse, move him back 4 or 5 feet and mount that gun to his shoulder, then you would have the same line, same angle, and you'd have that ejection of that shell casing at the gravel where it's at. And because that was one of the big things that made no sense to me, how you could have a shot into the into the doghouse and still have a round that ejected towards the gravel impact area. And so with that consideration, I've still, like I said, I have, I believe, as this expert explained, the guns had to be on this. The bore was lined up with these lines of the lasers, and I absolutely agree. Don't have a problem with it. I just think that the shooter, when was further back, because we have that number 2 shell casing recovery, and there's no way to explain that shell casing recovery unless there's some type of the gun being further back that would eject it. And this expert, he testified that most of these firearms eject to the right, somewhere, I think he said between 8 and 12 feet. And the firearm I was shooting ejected 7 to 11 feet. So we agree on those standpoints. And but the biggest issue that we had today was that the expert, and he's hired by the defense, he's there for one reason. He's there to show that there's no way that Alec Murdoch is the one that pulled this trigger. And Alec Murdoch, I think, is around 6'4", which I'm, in my heyday, I was 6'2", a little bit older, shortened up a little bit over the years. And just due to age, we lose a little bit of height. But they put it that the individual had to be at 5'2", and he would not leave that for any, he was consistent. No, the shooter shooting from the hip that would explain these, all these shots had to be at that certain height. And of course, I understand he's the defense. He has to maintain. And the prosecution came up, and they had a great point in the trial where, from the hip shot, that the prosecutor took that measuring tape, pulled it out to that exact distance that the expert, Mr. Sutton, said that's exactly how far the muzzle of the gun and the trigger assembly and the orientation had to be for that shot to be made. And the prosecutor dropped down to one knee, and it was there. And absolutely beautiful. But then he continued along and probably damaged it more than what that would have left the impression with. But like I said, it was extremely interesting. And you see a difference here between old school technology, and this is where that if you back this guy up 4 or 5 more feet, you'd get that number 2 position of what I created for Chris in that video. But you're seeing a lot of difference that of how different experts reached the same opinion on some things. And the truth of exactly what happened there that day is somewhere between the prosecution's witness and somewhere between the defense's witness. And which way would the jury go? I really don't know right now. But, you know, I'm old school. This is what I have to work on. This is what I worked on. This is how I did. Just due to how we used to work and understanding firearms, which the engineer, like I said, he admitted he has very limited knowledge of the firearms other than what's in the books. And the state's expert, of course, is a firearms expert, and he has vast knowledge of how these weapons work. And but he wasn't so clear as far as explaining what the shell casings meant, where the gun ported, and what the range of these guns when they're operated and where they go and how far they will kick out and eject a shell. And but that's just part of what happens in these cases. And the biggest thing that hurt the expert today for the defense is that he would not, and the jury would note it, I believe, that when he would not budge, that no one but a 5'2" or 5'3" person could fire that firearm. And he stuck with it by his guns on that. And I think that kind of hurt his credibility a little bit. Don't know. But I was impressed with the technologies. This is something that didn't exist back in the day that we used in law enforcement. And so this is what the juries and what you see on TV, this is what you expect. And this is exactly what you should see from this point on in all your trials. See this type of technologies so that people can better understand the alignment of those guns and what it means when the shells eject. I wish I had this technology back in my day. It would have been so much easier explaining certain things to juries. But like I said, I was only disappointed when he wouldn't break away from 5'2" only, and all guns had to be fired from the hip, or that's the way I took it. And so I was a little bit disappointed. But we'll be answering all the questions on this, but we're going to be covering something else tonight also. I want to make sure everybody's aware. We had Chris and I are going to be going out working cold cases, and we've started already on setting our schedule and moving out and as the weather breaks, and getting with some other forensic experts and scientists. And we have some technologies that we're going to be taking into Texas on one of our cold cases. Sometime it appears, hopefully, everything will start happening in March. And this is on the Amber Crum case. If any of y'all remember when I did a video on her disappearance in 1983, went missing and hasn't, the disappearance of her has always been a mystery. And the father, the natural biological father of her, Larry Crum, is still searching for her and believes that she's deceased, and more than likely she is, because she just disappeared. And from the explanation of what her mother explained and discussed of the case, it appears so, and they've just never been able to locate her. Well, we're going to be going into Texas with some new technologies and searching some properties out there. Looking forward to it. But I'm bringing this up for the fact that we've started our foundation to raise funds to pay for not only this cold case, some of the equipment. With some of the equipment that we're going to be using is extremely expensive. Either we have to rent it or we have to buy it. And even some of the cheaper equipment, such as ground probes and stuff, they're not cheap either. So we started a foundation, and it's a 501c nonprofit, and it's called True Crime Web Foundation. And it just gives you another option. Everyone that supports our channel, of course, those monies will be used for these cold cases. But I had been asked and advised that if we formed these nonprofit, that some of the people that could support the channel in this manner for the tax, and that would help, that they would be able to support us. And I just wanted to announce that. And if anyone's interested in supporting us through the 501c nonprofit, just send me an email, steve@truecrimeweb.com, and we'll be using all of those funds towards these cold cases, buying the equipment, renting the equipment, and paying for getting the people out there and everything.
Molly dropped the YouTube video that you did with Larry in chat for them if they want to go back and look at Larry's interview.
Absolutely. Appreciate that, Molly. And but that's where we're standing as we move forward on these cold cases and things. And like I said, I appreciate all y'all's support. It's absolutely amazing community, and I couldn't do it without you going out there and working these cases. And I look forward to not only with Amber's case, but with the other cases that we have that are lined up in several states. But our first case hopefully will be out there sometime in March. And absolutely, like I said, we want to thank everyone that supports us in so many different ways, from views to subscribers to members. Just means a lot to us, and we couldn't do it without you. So thank y'all for that. So now we'll get into all our questions and stuff.
Okay. ST, defense crime scene expert, did not impress me at all. Did you follow his theories?
Yes, I understand what his intent is. I understand exactly what he's talking about, that gun had to be pointed in a certain direction at a certain height. The theories about that, it's the only way that a gun can be fired, and that we have to not even think that a variable such as a person going down to a knee during a struggle and a gun going off. I've often seen people that are, in those final moments that are struggling with other people. Sometimes they're armed, sometimes they're not. And guns go off. And it doesn't have to be somebody that's flat on the bottom, standing upright and firing a gun. During these struggles for life, you're in every angle that you can imagine in those moments. And people fall, people get knocked down, they get the wind knocked out of them. And like I said, it's a close quarter battle. And so it's not always someone just standing there in total control with good muzzle discipline and good firearm stances firing a weapon. And of course, like I said, he's a forensic engineer, and he admitted he had very limited knowledge about the operations of firearms other than what he saw in books.
Trying to get to my blue light one
Pigeon
hand.
Mac, super sticker, $3.99. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. I love my blue light.
That she does.
Let's see. How was it? I don't know what that means. Okay, and this one we've done. All right, and DZ. Who else sleeps over at Granny's, then returns home to take a shower? Hint, Alex and Buster.
That was strange. And then, of course, you have the housekeeper that said that there was a damp towel. Didn't say towels, but I think that was a testimony, and which I don't know. And, but now we're looking at people that's under something that is duress that is not normal. And I can see both sides of the story. And so for me, seeing someone that such as Buster, now Alex could absolutely have a different reason. And Buster may also, as far as being protective of his father, if we take in for the face value of what he says, then it did occur because he's supposed to be under sworn testimony, and this is what happened. Hopefully he wasn't coached, and hopefully he didn't create any type of falsehoods or testified, and it perjured himself in any way. Hopefully that's not the case.
Okay. And Stacy's mom, did anyone see AM beating his chest when he got up to leave the court?
No, I missed that. I was out. We were doing tests, creating some more stuff that we were doing tests on. That
He had me in the field today.
Yeah, I had her out in the field today, trying to see what I could do with a phone. But I look forward to showing you that. What happened?
I can't. I'm trying to operate one end.
Southern Gal True Crime, $10. My small part to help your and Chris's important work you do in helping with these cold cases. Thank you. It means a lot to us. And like I said, these fundings not only pays for the projects that we're doing now, but as we move out into the field, we absolutely appreciate your support. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Hold on. I had that one. Where's the other one? Okay. Another one.
Prairie Dog 57. Love that. Prairie Dog 57, 1999. You nailed it, Steve. I am bashful. Well, the prosecution didn't use your theory. Love your show. And they may not just, like I said, every expert focuses upon certain aspects of the crime scene. I looked at the shell casings and how could the tracks of the bullets and the shell casings cross. This expert said that where does the lasers cross? And it's within position 2, 3, and 4 is you're only looking at within a 10 or 12-foot circle. And for my shell casings to line up with some of his aspects. And he did admit that if you backed away a few feet, that you could shoulder that firearm and get that angle, especially if you're 6'4". But of course, he can't say that. He had to put the persons closer to, and when you put people that close, you have to have stippling, and we only have stippling during a couple of shots. And so that stippling could only be limited that if they're squared up at that towards Maggie, they have to be within a certain distance for that stippling to occur. And we have far more shots than we have stippling. And so that has to be done from a further distance along those angles that he was talking about. I absolutely agree with it. You can't argue against technology. You just wherever your placement of that gun bore on that laser line.
All right. And Josh the Posh, I've never heard of a forensic engineer. That sounds like me today. How is different than other experts like forensic pathologists, anthropologists?
It is the first time I'd heard of a forensic engineer. Obviously, it is something. I was quite impressed. Like I said, I'm glad it exists. I'm glad that we have people out there, but we also have to be careful that when you become not only an engineer, but when you become an expert, you have to try to realize that there's other variables out there. And when you're up there, if there's something that is a variable that can happen, you can't say that no, a 6'4" individual could not make these shots. It had to be someone this height. That's where he lost the credibility with me. But as far as a forensic engineer, he's more into car wrecks and reconstruction and had done some law enforcement work on both sides of victims being shot by law enforcement and law enforcement shootings. But it was surprising. I was impressed.
All right. And Jennifer Rochelle, how do you feel the prosecution is doing, Steve?
Other than the biggest thing the prosecution's got going for them is Alec and his commitment that he was taking a nap during the shooting. Now, this is my opinion, that when he says that he's taking a nap and we have his voice there within minutes of the phones going silent, that's the biggest thing that the prosecution has. The prosecution lost a lot of ground today when the got up there and said that SLED, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, their agents possibly went in and moved some of the evidence, such as the shell casings. It's the way that he posed those questions that you talking to this forensic engineer, that you don't know if those shell casings may have been kicked by law enforcement or by the SLED agents. And I thought, oh, that's not good. And so when you have the prosecution starting to say that, then the jury is left with the understanding that we really don't know if we have a pristine crime scene as far as evidence being exactly where it's supposed to be. If you can, the defense will go in there and now say that even the prosecution says that evidence was moved. And they'll have a great point in that in closing, and if they seize upon it. Charlene Bound, love and appreciate the work y'all are doing. Thank you. Hello, Mrs. Steve.
Hello, Charlene.
Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
your
much.
support. She loves being called Mrs. Steve.
I do.
Yeah, she got her own little coffee cup, Mrs. Steve.
It's special. And I don't remember. Oh yeah, Josh the Posh. The prosecution asked that question. And
Yes.
It's about
Yes. and I thought, this ain't good. It's almost as bad as when the SLED agent Worley, when defense says, well, y'all didn't follow protocols on taking these pictures. And once again, the SLED agent said, no, we didn't follow protocol. And so from that aspect of it, the jury is going to start questioning some of the techniques used by the experts for and the crime scene investigators.
Okay. And Belly, the defense asked Buster when he saw his dad on June the 7th, what was he wearing? And he said white t-shirt and shorts. What time was that? Buster said Alex called him and told him about the situation.
I took it that from the way Buster testified, that as soon as he heard and was made aware of, they packed up and went from whatever part of the state they were in and arrived at the scene within some time prior to law enforcement taking those items, is the way I interpret it. But that doesn't mean that what had happened is that law enforcement hadn't already taken the clothing originally, and that Alex just by chance, once again, dressed in a white t-shirt and shorts. Don't know what the exact timeline is, but those are the two possibilities, is that or most likely is what happened. Just speculating.
Okay, I'm trying to catch up. All right. And Mr. Steve, in my opinion, part of the reason why the crime scene expert came across as a dud, I love that word, was because the defense lawyer, y'all know I call him Tricky Dicky, did not help him engage well with the jury. Thoughts?
Well, yes. Dick is the defense attorney, the lead defense attorney, I assume. He's the senior. Is not as well versed, in my opinion, as the other attorneys, and I'm sure he has his moments, but I agree with you. He is not the most reasonable person that I would want on the case, especially with what he may be facing with what he did with that firearm today and the comment he made towards the prosecution team. So he may have issues with that at some point in the future.
Okay. And Lane, what did trajectory exhibits used to look like? Were they drawings, or did the jury go on a field trip to the crime scene?
Yes, there were drawings and there were sticks
And
and string. You would go
Lots of string.
and because we pull strings for everything, for trajectories, for blood pattern analysis, and you stick these rods. Now they have fiberglass rods and equipment and everything's. But we would just buy old wooden dowel rods and use them. And there's nothing wrong with that. That was just the technologies at the time. And now we have it worked. And but now as technology advances, and it's been around for many years. I've been retired for a few years, but as we get into more of the 3D imaging and some of this virtual world of what the crime scenes are going to be like in the next 10 years, because what you're seeing on the CSI crime scene TV shows and some of the way these shows show that you can almost walk through a virtual world, that's coming. It's here to a certain degree now, but nothing like it will be in the next generation. But yeah, it used to just be strings and sticks and drawings.
Okay. Slowly but surely. And Mr. Steve, did you catch when Tricky Dicky, and in my opinion, in cahoots with the expert, tried to slip in some testimony for which they had not laid foundation? In other words, the physics of throwing the phone.
One of the trials that I was doing today, before this was even brought up, was
throwing a phone.
Going down the road, throwing the phone. I anticipated that the defense would get into this, and I spoke with Chris, and that will be coming out in the next day or two. I've just got to go up and finalize some of the transfer, the videos of throwing a phone out of a vehicle going 42 miles an hour, and how far you can toss it and what it looks like. And so we covered that aspects of it. And of course, they weren't able to get that information in. Doesn't mean they won't call someone that will get that information in. But the mere appearance of asking the question gives the jury, it may put something in their mind to look at something along those lines. And that's how come I was doing those tests. I was figuring that someone at some point would, for the defense, question how that phone could get there, and could it get there from a vehicle?
It wasn't my phone. It was a very old phone. See, they know you.
Yes.
See?
Are they going to buy you? No, I have certain things that I use. Now, I do wrap them up and try to keep them from getting busted.
Yeah. Try is the optimum word there.
I break things.
He does not have baby hands. All right. And Haley, this is my first time watching. Are you guys married? If so, for how long?
It'll be 33 years in just a few weeks. And so, but we've been together longer than 33 years, but we've been married 33.
Yes.
Yeah.
Will be. Might as well be.
Might as well be.
Yeah.
Or,
does it feel like 33? Don't.
No, I can't answer that. Yes. No, it feels. No, it doesn't feel like 33. Actually.
There you go. There you go. All right. Y'all heard it. Y'all heard it. All right. And from Lane, was the angle so high that the was likely crouched, almost like they just got done tying their shoe?
And when you're talking about Paul's shot, it can be anywhere along that angle. It's almost, as they described, they went with the 45 to 135 total of 180 from that. When I recreated the shot that you can either watch in our previous videos that we did, or you can go see the actual video real time of when I shoot a ballistic gelatin and a reenactment of the gunshot wound to Paul on Monsters Are in Our Bed Mob Crew. If you go to their channel, they have that. that I went to the ground laying on my back um, for the reasons that I believe that there's a possibility that the shooter, either as you said, could be crouched, but I took it a step further that a lot of times in these crime scenes and dynamic situations, people fall. And when I went to the ground and made that shot, it felt natural and it creates that angle and it allows that angle and the trajectory and all the blood spatter that we see fits with the story of that gunshot wound and the trajectory.
And Haley, who just asked about our marriage, her hubby is coming home from a 9-month deployment soon. Wow. Thank you for your service.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And yours too, Haley. Bless your heart, honey. Bless your heart. All right.
Oh, WO22, $10 super sticker. Thank you for your support.
Thank you so much. All right. Let's see. Mercy. Jennifer. All right. You don't have anywhere to go, do you?
No. Okay. And I knew everybody's going to be focused on this expert, and rightly so.
Okay. All right. And Grammy Nini question. Do you think they went through Maggie's shooting first on purpose? By the way, Mr. Steve's recreation were so much better, and there wasn't a 11-year-old little guy shooting.
They took the average height of what 11-year-old and said that, and the prosecution
took the 5'2".
Yeah, they took it to the extreme.
Oh my goodness!
And they, like I said, the defense has a reason of doing that, and they have to separate the accused as far away from the scene as they can, and but standing that ground, he had a hard task. And like I said, towards the end, the prosecution does have the ability to say that this man here is a paid hired gun, and he's here for one thing, to say that Alec Murdoch is not the shooter because it's impossible for him to do so. And in law enforcement, you know that nothing is impossible. But thank you for my recreation thing. Like I said, but this stuff versus my stuff is a little bit different. But like I say, we come from two different generations and of crime scene. I'm old school. This is new school stuff, and the truth is somewhere between the two.
Okay. And Sayotha Best.
Yes.
Does anyone care if you can hear the shots from the house when evidence shows he was with family at kennels? Woo!
What else we do the rest of the day today?
What's that word? Decibels.
Yeah, she learned about decibels today. Actually, this is another thing that I was working on today prior to this. The test I ran, of course, are not with using the equipment that the expert had. He's talking about some high value stuff, although they're not that expensive. I just don't have them. I used a phone app that actually came extremely close to his numbers, and I was most impressed because I ran some tests today about gunshots from that distance. Once again, my neighbors are just amazed I'm out shooting, but I fired what you could hear, and I'll have the slides made for it in a future show of that the decibel out measured outside of a residence of what it would sound like. And I think it was like 109 decibels, somewhere in that area, around 109 decibels. And then we took the meter inside out and fired it. And it was just as he described. it was normal room. I think it was like 75 decibels. And then we opened a window inside and fired a third shot so that we could be inside the residence, but with an open window or open door. And that was what really surprised me, because I thought it would be somewhere between the 75 decibels and the 109. It wasn't. It stayed at the same decibel level of somewhere around 75, 79, I think, which was surprising. And now what he spoke about, a quiet home, the app that we were using, it has classifications of quiet home or a refrigerator running. And it was pretty interesting. And from my free app to what he used was extremely close, and I was most impressed.
Yeah, and baby Steve pulled through today too. We had to have some backup on that one.
Yeah.
All right. And Laura Doon.
We count on your expertise and smart approach, whether Evansdale, Delphi, Idaho, Murdoch, and others. Thank you. Thank you for your support, Laura. That means a lot to us.
Thank you very much. As always.
I talked to Larry today. He said he spoke with Drew Collins, of course, is the father of Elizabeth Collins, one of the victims of the Evansdale homicide. And that Drew had told Larry, after I couldn't get up there last week due to the snow, that he's going to be giving me lessons on how to drive in the snow.
You taking a rental?
No.
No? Oh, Lordy. All right. Let's see here.
But thank you for your support, Laura. That makes a lot to us.
Absolutely. All right. And Lane, is it normal for law firms to use the same experts in different cases? I thought it was weird the engineer was on the boat case.
Well, you build relationships, and you know those relationships, and you have to, if you're declared an expert, you're declared an expert, and the juries will never know how often, unless there's some type of hearing that would allow that. They don't know that you're a hired gun for consistent with this alliance, and so. But no, it's not unusual, because the states use the same experts all the time. Also, they use their state employees that have the training and the expertise, the lab work, and so they use that. And so, generally, when you have one expert against the other, the jury a lot of times just may not even pay attention to it.
I got to show this. This is priceless. Let me have that one. So this is from Molly and Mrs. Steve. He's going to take snow driving lessons in your car with some fake blood and luminol. That's priceless.
Yeah, I appreciate your confidence.
That's priceless. Thanks, Molly. She knows him. All right. And here's that word. Sayotha Best. Seriously, the video shows he was at the kennels. She wasn't home on schedule. But who would else know this? And
I see your point that was she collateral if it was someone that was other than Alex? But now, and I can see your point that if Paul was the target, then of course anyone else that was there that was a witness to it would be also a victim. And I see your point on that. Which, of course, going by the state's theory, is Alex, and he got them both there for this one situation and left his phone at home and committed this crime, and for the reasons of the motives of the financials. And but yes, who else would know it? And that is a good point.
Okay. And Graminini, what did you think about Poot?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's one
Aim
of the
and rifle, huh?
That's one of the attorneys. That's Tricky Dicky.
Okay, so Tricky Dicky's really name is
No, that's a short name of his. That's a shortening of his name. We have
I'm
totally
so confused.
We have totally lost control.
All right. aiming rifle at prosecution with joke and courtroom laughing. I
And
didn't find it funny. He
yes,
pointed a gun.
that was what I alluded to earlier, of that he will probably be facing something at some point, because he pointed a firearm at the prosecution table and said, tempting.
Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, and say, Autumn, Best, wouldn't they have phone numbers of people in the area and unknown numbers be investigated?
Yeah, the geofencing and everything, yes, they would have done that. And did they? I'm sure they did. And some of that information is exactly how come they were able, and has been brought up in this trial, of tracking the phones and not only the data that's within the phones, but they would have used that cell tower data also.
Okay. And Prairie Dog. Steve, I wouldn't expect the defense witness to come up with your theory, but I certainly think the prosecution could have asked a question about falling back.
Yes. And, like I said, it's just a theory of mine, but it does fit everything from where the shell would be ejected into the room, along those lines from that angle, and creates everything. And I'm an officer that has fallen before. I've tripped up, fell flat on my back. It's not comfortable, especially whenever you're facing a situation whereas you're in a fight. No one wants to be on their back, and but when you're holding a firearm or a shotgun, I just simply, it occurred to me, it makes sense, and it is one of the possibilities. Not saying it is the only possibility, but it's one of the possibilities.
All right. And Aspen Connor. Oh, that's the tempting thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Aspen.
Hey, bud.
Already done that. All right. And Prairie Dog. Oh, nope. Okay. So this one here,
that's
just restating, I guess, about the falling that proved that Alex could have made the shot, but the prosecution should have thought about it. Okay, yeah. So that's the same thing.
Absolutely. Okay? And I agree with you. It's just something that occurred to me.
All right. And Eileen, did it just sound bad to me, or the expert for defense weapon and ammo not being the same as was used? Does it make a difference?
I missed that part of the testimony. Did it just sound bad, or expert for defense and ammo not being the same as it was? As far as the shotgun ammo being used or not, at the distances that it was used, you could use almost any type of shot and you're going to have similar results. It's distance against those loads. So from that standpoint, there's so much kinetic energy at those close ranges of 5 feet and in, and which even the one that Paul's first injury from the shotgun, it wouldn't have mattered really if it was a lighter load birdshot. It would have still been tremendous damage and would have been fatal. At those ranges, it really doesn't, but it does open up the opportunity for it to be attacked in front of the jury, and it's not something that you would expect that expert to do. That you would try to stay as close to actual situation as you could.
All right, let's see here. And Rain alias, did any of the testimony from the trial today change your mind on anything or see it differently? Steve?
No, everything, I was quite impressed, other than I wish I had this technology that they were using today back almost 40 years ago. And 30 years ago, most certainly in the 90s when I got my certification, we didn't have this. But no, investigation work and homicide, it really doesn't matter. You have to follow the fundamental and physics doesn't change. Everything that can happen in old school can happen with. It's just that you have the ability to demonstrate it using this high technology stuff, and I understand, and it is far easier when it's presented to follow along, and I'm all for that. Because when we had to take pictures of strings, and you would look in a room and it looked like a spider web, because you may have 20 or 30 strings interjecting and intersecting each other across a room. You couldn't even walk through the room. And so from that standpoint of being able to use lasers or these programs, these 3D technologies, is absolutely amazing.
And Mr. Steve, disturbingly, I heard some South Carolina lawyers on YouTube saying that they all thought that if this ends in a hung jury, the state would not retry. Too expensive. Thoughts?
I believe if I had to put any money on it, I would go with that. It is more than likely it will be a hung jury. If it stands exactly like it is today, especially when the prosecution comes in and says that you don't know if the SLED agents moved evidence or not. That wasn't good. And so I do believe that there's a high probability of a hung jury. Now, whether or not they move forward with the charges, and the biggest thing of they may not retry is that Alex is facing so many other crimes. You know, he has like 90-something other indictments, and will serve the rest of his life in prison, more than likely. So there is a possibility that if it is a hung jury, it's done.
All right. And Southern Gal True Crime. Mr. Steve, how long does it usually take to do your recreations? Love them, by the way.
The last one that with all the shooting, which I made 2 shots. If you watch the shots of when I recreated Paul's, and I had to build that whiteout cubicle room and pull the string and mark it with tape and everything. That one took me probably almost 8 hours to set up the plastic, the outline, everything. And I know it's low tech, but you know, and then making sure that all the angles are right, and that you get, you know, when you pull that trigger, you want it to do and recreate as close as possible with the technologies of just understanding trajectories and angles, and pulling that trigger and seeing it go through an individual mannequin that you set up at the proper height and the approximate location, and you recreate it. Everything works out and it goes through, such as the chest wound to that mannequin representing Paul, and then going out and then setting up the mannequin and ballistic gelatin, because it takes to create ballistic gelatins is a 2-day process, from the cooking of it in her pots and pans on our stove to forming it, refrigeration, and then injecting synthetic blood into it so that you'll have that blood spatter to occur properly. It takes some time, but sometimes, like I said, it's several hours. Now today, when I was doing the 2 tests today, I think maybe 4 hours. That's doing the drive-by, tossing the phone, and then also doing the gunshot. So we did probably 4 or 5 hours of testing today. Good question. Thank you.
All right. And Grammy Nene, Mrs. Steve. Oh, my hand is still wrapped up in this thing till the middle of March. Every day is a little bit better, but I'm still one-handed. But thank you so much for asking. And Dave wants to know what you're breaking this week.
Well, I tried to break that phone all day. Now the shooting the firearm today and getting the GSR on me and everything from the rifle, but no, I hadn't broke any. Now I haven't unpackaged the phone either.
I was going to say, you haven't undone yet.
Yeah, I haven't unpackaged the phone.
There's still hope.
Yeah.
All right. And Davy, 1974 and 1969. Not sure if it's been discussed, but why do you think they didn't ask Buster if that was AM's voice on the video?
Yeah, and that was surprising because I thought that they would. And did they just not want to put him under that stress and see the emotions of him saying yes, or listening to that audio of the last moments and the last time that his brother's voice and his mother's voice and his father's voice was all heard together? And was there some mercy shown in that moment? Other than that, I have no idea, but it really doesn't matter or would make an impression. I kind of like that they didn't, for that fact that this young man has to live with those memories regardless of listening to his family, enjoying what was in most cases a normal day, and people laughing and talking. And within minutes of that, two of them lost their lives. But all
right, hold on. And Ann, isn't it odd that in our system, jurors can't ask questions? In cases where the defendant opts for a judge-only trial, the judge can ask questions.
Some courts I have seen where they would, at some point during the trial, be able to ask the judge or send a judge a question. And sometimes the judge, in certain trials, I'm trying to remember the last time I saw that, what trial it was, but it does occur every now and then where a juror or something occurs that they want clarification on. And I don't know if what that trial was, but I had saw that occur on at least one occasion.
Okay. Right. And that one. And then Lane, is Alex being tried federally for the financial crimes? Given his history, I'm pessimistic about his county doing much.
I don't know. I don't know if those are federal indictments or if they're local indictments.
Okay. And Kathleen, what's the difference in inches of the inside of the kennel and outside on the ground? That would also take off to 3 inches of height off a person if Paul was inside and Alex outside on the second shot.
And on the ledge work there, I don't know how thick the slab is. Generally, most slabs or something like that is probably a 3.5 inch slab, 4 inch slab, and so you may have an inch or two, but it wouldn't really be enough that would change much as far as because the angle of the gun, it has to be shot at a very acute angle, and that trigger is going to be very close to the ground, and that can only occur from a couple of positions, either holding the gun almost on the ground or laying on your back and shouldering it from your back to get it.
All right. And the last thing is we've had a couple of comments in here about the jury isn't allowed to take notes.
Yes.
Why no notes?
It is interesting. Some courts allow it, some don't. And in this case, I think it will serve the jurors well because the financial stuff was so for the prosecution side. But now this may play out well for the defense, and it may create a hung jury, which I'm absolutely sure that the defense would be extremely happy with a hung jury.
Okay. You are done.
Well, like I said, I want to thank everybody that's supported our channel tonight by watching, being here, contributed, donations. It means a lot to us. And as we move forward, not only covering this
You got
case.
one more. One more. All right. And Lane, were they to Maggie consistent with a 6'4" person, or did they have an odd angles too?
Pull that up. I can't. Okay, I can see it now.
What?
Where the shots to Maggie says. The angles that we have on Maggie, of course, is from the angle that goes into the bottom of the doghouse, and then we have the second individual where it goes into the bird cage. The angle that's going into the doghouse could be from my position number 2, which is further back, being shoulder mounted, because we only have, that we know of, 2 shots that cause stippling. So some of the shots had to be further away, and for them to be further away and be impacts, we can't all be stacked on top of the body. They have to happen from a longer distance. And if you go along that line that's going up to probably the 10 o'clock position of that laser line going off the screen, you move that back a few feet, and that's a shoulder mounted firearm shooting at that angle and downward from a person that's around 6 something, because as you move back, it rises so many inches per foot, and it's reasonable, and it actually corresponds with where the ejection would be, back towards the gravel pit impact area for the ejection of that firearm.
All right. And Joan, how can he explain luring Maggie home? I think her sister's testimony was crucial.
And they'll weigh it, and of course, defense is going to go after that. It was all about Alex's father, and but yes, how will they eventually weigh it? We'll see, because they said that if the defense holds to their schedule, they said there'll be, a week, and so by Friday we should know some answers.
Okay. And Monique, any thoughts on the coroner's report? He used a thermometer and documented estimated time of death as 9, said between 8 to 10, so chose 9 for death certificate. I thought I heard.
Yeah, I know it's somewhere around 9, but I hadn't seen the that, and but for someone that's so active with their phones, and the prosecution is going to say that when those phones went, that's when it started, because they were never answered in active communications. The defense, all they have to do is show that it occurred 1 minute after, or even during the time that the moment Alex's vehicle started leaving the property. If the homicides occurred at any time during that, he's not involved. And that's what the defense is going to try to say, that when these occurred, he's in his vehicle, either traveling to his mother's or coming back.
Okay, and I think that's it. If I missed anybody, drop him a line.
Right.
Oh, nope, we got another one.
All right.
Dia from Tennessee. Do you think it odd that Buster knew nothing of the replacement gun, and he testified that he had never seen it?
I do, especially with how much communications they all spoke and shared, and how often they communicated. I did find that odd, and why did it occur? And that was a very odd statement. Is it something that he forgot? Don't know.
All right. I think that's it.
All
Thank
right.
y'all so much.
Well, I appreciate y'all listening to this, and I knew there'd be a lot of interest on this case here. But like I said, we also want to focus on the next case that we're going to be working on when we go out to Texas. And I want to thank all y'all's support for that case. And I look forward to covering that. I spoke with Larry. We're going to do another show on Amber, probably at least one more full-length show before we go to Texas. And hopefully everything lines up and we get out there probably mid-March. And that's where it all depends upon our expert getting them there from Illinois. And but I just not 5 minutes before the show started, emailed the scientists and trying to get the schedule of when we're going to go out there. But we want to thank you guys for being here tonight, and y'all stay safe out there. And let's see, our next show will be Thursday. But I've got shows.
Oh yeah, you got members.
I got members
and
tomorrow.
Morning Watch.
And then I've got Morning Watch at Wednesday night or Thursday morning at 12:05.
Mm-hmm.
Look forward to seeing y'all then. Y'all stay safe out there now.
Love y'all.
Bye.